scoot up a little bit more. Okay. Yo, what is good, everybody? It is the Godfather of VR, the ageless wonder, the man, Lincoln Clay, coming back at you with a live stream of the Microsoft Flight Simulator. I originally said I wasn't going to buy this game until the VR support was added. Well, come to find out, when this game was in beta, it did support VR, and then they stripped it away once the game went live. But it's supposed to be implemented again here in the fall for the HP Reverb G2 first, and then later for all the other headsets. So I saw a few streams, including my boy J-Dub, and decided I'd go ahead and give it a shot. It is a $60 game. Now, I understand there's some microtransactions that are quite pricey. I don't, airports and whatnot. Now, I don't know if I'm going to go off and purchase any of those things. Excuse me. But I did monkey with this for a moment, and initially I was not impressed with the graphics. I had my graphical settings set at high end because that was the recommended setting, but I turned it all the way up to ultra just to see what happened, and it was a little bit better. The graphics were a little bit better. It is detailed, and I guess for flat screen, I guess I'm not terribly impressed. But if this was VR, what I'm looking at on flat screen, if I see that in VR, then I'll definitely be impressed. The graphics inside the plane is razor sharp. It's the environment, the mountains looked a little bit funny, but this game does operate on real time, real weather, real conditions. So I took a flight from my hometown of Grand Rapids and flew to Detroit, and I didn't stream that because, being that it's real time, it was dark because it's 10:30 here. So I was flying in pitch black night, and only when we were coming to towns that were populated where you could see anything. But so what I'm going to do is continue with the flight training, just so you guys can see it that way. I've already done the basic controls and cameras. Now I'm going to need to learn how to read these altitudes, attitudes, and instruments. And initially, when I plugged my flight stick up to this game, it was not functioning properly. It turned out I had to go back and update the drivers. See here, in this training you will learn about the following: airspeed indicator, attitude indicator, altitude. Well, there it says altitude, here it says attitude. Altimeter, turn and slip indicator, heading indicator, barometer or variometer, tachometer. Sixes. So yeah, I definitely need to learn how to read the instruments. Now, when I took the flight from Grand Rapids to Detroit, I turned the controls over and basically put it on automatic pilot once I got the plane to fly in a straight line, and then it got to Detroit and kept flying. So then I took control of the plane and tried to circle back, but I made such a hard turn that it stressed the plane and caused it to crash. So I guess with planes, as you're climbing up, one way of slowing the plane down is to climb up a little bit, and one way to speed up is to go down, start the descent a little bit. So it looks like this is telling you that that you probably want to throttle down a little bit before pointing the nose of the plane down. So I guess once you get to your targeted height, I guess they're saying you should keep the horizon like a couple of inches above the dashboard. So anyway, once I got the flight stick updated with the drivers, I was able to somewhat work through it. So let's get on with it.
talking about attitudes of flight, how your plane is oriented relative to the horizon. If you look outside, you can see the cockpit is just about 4 inches below the horizon line. We're flying straight with a decent rate of speed. This is the cruise attitude. Let's see how it reads on your instruments. Take a look at the attitude indicator. As the name implies, it shows your current attitude. The white line is the horizon, with the sky above and the ground below. That orange element in the middle, aligned with the horizon, that's your plane. Just like we saw outside, our current attitude reads pretty much straight and level. Okay, now let's see how much power the engine's generating. Check your tachometer. Looks like we're pushing around 2,300 revolutions per minute.
2,300.
Combined, attitude and engine RPMs translate to aircraft performance.
Oh shit.
Which leads us to your airspeed indicator. Now, last but not least, check your altimeter. To figure out your altitude, you always want to read the small needle first. That's how many thousands of feet up you are. Then on to the big needle for the hundreds.
Okay, so...
With our current attitude and power output, we're holding a speed of 90 knots and a stable altitude of 6,000 feet. But that's about to change. Take the stick when you're ready.
Alright.
Pull back slightly on the yoke to raise the nose just above the horizon line. About 2 inches. Make sure you don't pitch up too much, or the angle will be too steep to create lift. And without enough lift, we'll stall. Alright, go full throttle and start climbing. Welcome to the climb attitude. See how it shows up on your attitude indicator and tachometer? According to your altimeter, we're gaining altitude. But we're losing airspeed even at full throttle, proving you can't avoid basic physics while making a climb. Okay, before we go on, let's get back to a cruise attitude. Ease up on the yoke and aim your nose just below the horizon. Then throttle back down to 2,300 RPMs. Nice job. We're now set up with the same attitude and power we had at the top of our lesson. Next up is the descent attitude. Start by reducing your RPMs to 1,800. Then drop the plane's nose a bit further below the horizon.
Alright.
As expected, with a nose down attitude, our altitude is decreasing while our speed is picking up. Why don't you get us back to a cruise attitude and we'll hit the last part of our lesson. There we go. Now that we know how to cruise, climb, and descend, let's talk about the turn attitude. Gently pull the yoke left or right to start rolling the plane. If you take a look outside, you can see how our attitude's changed, but you can also check your instruments for the details. As a general rule, you always want to keep your turns under 30 degrees. At the top of your attitude indicator, there's a series of notches representing 10 degrees each. Use them to control your roll. Notice the more you turn, the more you need to pull back on the yoke to maintain altitude. When the closer you get to that pilot state of mind. So keep practicing, and whenever you're done, pass me the controls.
All right.
Thanks. I've got control now. Well,
All right. I might have to. I might end up having to do that one again because I think I missed a couple of the instruments. I think, namely, the one how to read the degree, you know, the angle of what direction I'm turning. So, all right, let me take a minute to come to the chat. All right, let's go ahead and do this one and learn to take off. Does take a few minutes to load, that's for certain. So tomorrow, when it's daytime, I will take that flight and rather go to Detroit. I think this time I'll leave from Detroit and come back to Grand Rapids. Now, Detroit, from Grand Rapids to Detroit, I think was supposed to be an 18-minute flight, but because of how slow I was flying and the fact that I couldn't keep a straight line, the flight ended up being about 35 minutes. Okay. Got the sound going in and out. It's See, looking at that environment right there, the mountains looked a little bit funny, but the rest of the environment looked detailed. All right, let's get ready to go.
There's an old saying I like. A mile of road will take you a mile. A mile of runway will take you anywhere. Taking off isn't hard, but there are a few key points to remember. First, we always take off into the wind, which won't be an issue on a calm day like today. Second, before we enter a runway, we always make sure it's clear.
All right.
Everything looks good, no cross traffic. Go ahead and taxi into position. The rudder pedals should make steering the plane pretty easy. You're a bit too far down the runway. Let me move the plane back into position. Alright, let's do this. Apply full power and I'll walk you through the takeoff as we go. Use your rudders to stay on the center line and keep pushing power until you reach 55 knots. Now gently pull back on the yoke. Line up the top of your instrument panel so it's a couple inches above the horizon. That'll pitch us up and set a good climb attitude. And we're airborne. Focus on flying straight. Use your rudders to keep the runway heading of 210 degrees. Maintain 75 knots and we'll reach our target altitude of 5,500 feet in no time.
Alright.
Ah, 5,500 feet. A nice, safe altitude for part 2 of our lesson. Straight and level flight. First step here is adjusting our attitude. We're in a cruise attitude, pushing max power. To stay level at our target altitude, let's start by easing the throttle back to 1,800 RPMs. Notice, to maintain altitude, you need to pitch the nose up. You could just keep pulling on the yoke to hold steady, but that's not really a precise means of control. Probably better to adjust your trim wheel until you don't need to push or pull on the yoke. Drag the trim down when you need to set the nose up. Drag it up to set the nose down. Try adding trim to keep us at 5,500 feet without increasing throttle. If you feel our pitch slipping and need to get back to the proper attitude, don't worry. Just pull on the yoke, then dial in the right trim. The way I was taught, when you adjust the trim, you make rough changes at first to remove pressure on the yoke, then small adjustments to find the perfect setting to keep your desired attitude. That's the key to straight and level flight. It saves you from constantly pushing or pulling on the yoke. And that gives you more time to enjoy the ride. If you want more practice using the trim, go for it. Whenever you're ready to pass the controls, I'll be here.
Okay, that does help. like that with that trim. All right.
Okay, I have control. Hope you enjoyed the lesson.
All right. Ooh, landing. Ooh. Let me check chat. Hussein X, what is good? Fatal Charade, what is up? Jamal Adams. Fatal Charade, you said I think it's crazy that not even a 2080 can run this game at 4K 60. I'm working with a 2070 and a i7 9700K. I didn't even stop to think about the frame rates, to tell you the truth. I did notice a little bit of pop-in though. And I think they might be using, I think this game might possibly be using the cloud to stream in some of the assets. And this game does tax your PC a little bit because, you know, I checked the temperature of my PC and I think it's running. Let me check it again. Yeah, we're at 80 degrees on the graphics card and 61 on the processor. But I think I set it to max out at, I think I set it to limit out at 80 so it won't run any hotter. I saw a benchmark earlier where this guy was running a 2080 Ti and an i9 109 a 10900K and he was getting 44 frames per second at ultra settings. Well, I do have this set at ultra settings. It did recommend high-end settings for me, but I set it at ultra because I wanted to see what it looked like. But now that you mentioned it, I think I'll go back and I'll go back to the training menu because I think I will go ahead and turn the graphics back down to high end. And it does take a moment to load, no question about that. So, if this game taxes your PC like that, flat screen, it's going to tax your PC even more once you hook a VR headset up to it. Right here, I got it set on ultra. So we'll go back down to high end. So I'll go ahead and learn how to land, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Mr. Moderns, what's going on? See, this game would be perfect if the Steam version had Oculus Rift support. Oh, the Steam version. So, from what I understand, it's supposed to start out with support for the HP Reverb G2, and then the other headsets will come later. See, that's where I might have made a mistake because I bought this game directly from the Microsoft store because I heard people were having problems starting the game up through Steam. So I decided, since this is a Microsoft game, I decided to buy it directly from the store and just cut Steam out of the middle. But I hope that even though I bought it from the Microsoft store, when the VR support reaches the other headsets, I won't have to go through Steam to use it. So I think I'll go ahead and try to land this puppy, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. But when I took off from Gerald R. Ford Airport, where I live at, because the airport, Gerald R4 Airport, is about it's about 10 minutes from where I live, 10-15 minutes. And I did recognize the main road that runs along that highway. So, but I'm not going to be doing any of this shit where I'm flying to Europe and taking 8-hour flights and that kind of stuff. Alright, what goes up must come down. In this training session, you will focus on the key techniques for successful landings, manage speed and glide path on the final approach, flare the aircraft to touch down smoothly, brake after landing to end the flight safely. So this is supposed to be a 4-minute drill. Let's go ahead. Let's do this. Let's do this. So it looks like we got to come in at about 65 knots. And unfortunately, this stream is being output at 720p at about 30 frames per second. There's no way I could turn it up any higher than that. I mean, I think the band output or something like that, I got it set at 1080p, but the video output, I've got it set at 720, because that's kind of the default settings based on my internet speed and what kind of, you know, my PC and all that stuff. So, but as much as this is taxing my PC, there's no way I could try to up it to 1080, try to output at 1080 60. It just, my computer might end up crashing. It happened once when I tried to set a course. I tried to turn it up to 1080 60 on the output, and I tried to turn all the graphical settings up within the game. So this is while maintaining the same attitude, reduced throttle. Oh boy. What we got here? Said Lansing International Airport should be in this. It probably is. Actually, if you want, Fatal, tomorrow I'll stream this and fly to Lansing from Grand Rapids tomorrow. Am I playing this on the mechanical hard drive? Yeah. I'm not playing this on the SSD, if that's what you're trying to ask me. Alright, so I switched back to the game, so I won't be able to check the chat until after this drill is over, so bear with me for a few minutes.
My first instructor used to say the best part of flying is landing in one piece. The man was a terminal pessimist, but he wasn't wrong. Today, you're in charge of bringing us in for a safe landing. We've got clearance for a straight-in approach, so we don't have to complete the standard traffic pattern. And I've already set us up in landing configuration at 65 knots with 10 degrees of flaps and idle power. We're on the glide slope now. Maintain speed around 65 knots. Change your pitch if you need to, and keep your aim point on the runway number. When you're targeting the runway number, you want to keep it steady in your sights. If it looks like the number's moving up in your windscreen, you're coming in low. You'll need to add a bit more throttle to get back on the slope. If it looks like the number's moving down in your windscreen, well, then you're too high. You'll need to add flaps to increase your rate of descent, but you'll also need to push forward and trim to change your attitude and maintain the same speed. the threshold, shift your aim point to the end of the runway. Then, pull back slightly on the yoke to aim the nose just above it.
This ain't gonna go well.
We're past the threshold, but still a bit high. Keep reducing altitude. You should be able to start flaring the plane now. Keep pulling back slowly. Let the plane settle onto the runway. Don't push it down, but don't let it start climbing. Nice. Now apply the brakes to slow us down and bring the plane to a stop. Great job. As they say, any landing you can walk away from is a good landing. And if you can use the plane the next day, it's outstanding. Landings can be hard, even for seasoned pilots. Trust me, don't hesitate to practice. After all, that's what we're here for, right?
Oh, wait. Woo-wee, that was kind of a janky landing, Mr. Modern, but thanks. Oh, boy. Well, I'm going to keep practicing at this game because I definitely want to have, here, let me turn this down a little bit. I'm going to keep practicing at this because I want to have my skills sharpened by the time it gets VR support. I want to be able to land this plane in my sleep. But Fatal Charade, if you're still watching, yeah, tomorrow instead of flying back to Detroit, I'll fly to Lansing tomorrow, and I'll hit you up on Twitter before I go live, because I think from Grand Rapids to Lansing, that flight can't be more than 15 minutes because the flight from here to Detroit was supposed to be 18 minutes. You know, and as far as driving goes, Lansing is about an hour away from me, and Detroit's about 2.5, 3 hours away. So the flight to Lansing should be a very, very short flight. So I'll contact you on Twitter tomorrow, let you know that I'm about to go live, and then you can check it out. And as I approach Lansing, you can let me know if you recognize any of the buildings there. You know, if I can keep the plane steady, then I'll keep my eye open for MSU Stadium. You said depending on traffic? Okay. Well, I got to get ready for work tomorrow. I still got to get some things together for work tomorrow, namely my lunch and all that kind of good stuff. So it looks like I'm going to have to shut it down right there. But this was kind of interesting. So we'll do it again tomorrow. Thanks for watching, everybody. You guys know my sign-off line, Wakanda Forever. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll catch y'all tomorrow. Deuces. East Lansing. Oh, you said MSU Stadium is in East Lansing. LAN is on the north side of town. Okay. But still, even at 500 feet, 1,000 feet up in the air or something like that, I'd still like to think that I would be able to see MSU Stadium. But we'll check it out tomorrow. Or maybe I'll do it the other way around and take off from Lansing and go to Grand Rapids. But we'll check it out tomorrow. I'm Boogie on out of here, Mr. Modern. We'll see you, Fatal Charade. Everybody, have a good night. We'll catch y'all later. Deuces.